The Devourer fleet appeared out of hyperspace like a nightmare made real. Their mothership was a sphere of black metal larger than Earth's moon, surrounded by thousands of smaller vessels that moved in perfect formation. They had come to harvest another young civilization, just as they had done countless times across the galaxy. They expected to find a primitive species hiding in fear, ready to be consumed. Instead, they found something their vast computer minds could not understand. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different species, all working together in chaotic unity. Admiral Yun Tae stood on the bridge of the command ship Terra Nova, watching the enemy approach on his screens. Around him, representatives from 23 different alien species worked at control stations designed for beings of many different shapes and sizes. Somehow, despite all their differences, they were functioning as a team. All ships report ready for battle, Admiral Kang announced from his communication station. His systems were managing real-time coordination between species that had never worked together before, using translation programs that had been written in just a few days. Morty bioships are in position behind Jupiter, reported Captain Naiva through her water-filled breathing helmet. We will strike when the enemy does not expect us. Zephyrian swarm units are spread throughout the asteroid belt, buzzed Hivemind Kelseth through its insect translator device. We are ready to coordinate mass attack patterns. Luminar energy constructs are fully charged, declared Zarkai, its crystal body glowing brighter with excitement. We will overwhelm their shields with pure energy. The Devourers began their attack using the same systematic approach they had used to destroy hundreds of worlds. They analyzed the defending fleet, calculated the most efficient attack patterns, and began a methodical assault designed to minimize their own losses while destroying all resistance. It should have worked perfectly. It had always worked before, but the Allied fleet did not behave according to any logical pattern that the Devourers could understand. Human ships used kamikaze tactics that made no strategic sense from a computer's perspective. Morty vessels suddenly grew new weapons in the middle of combat. Zephyrian swarms split apart and reformed in ways that seemed completely random. Luminar constructs shifted between solid matter and pure energy, following patterns that appeared to have no purpose. The Devourer computer systems tried desperately to adapt to these chaotic tactics, but every time they developed a response to one strategy, the Allies immediately switched to something completely different. It was like trying to fight an enemy that changed all the rules of warfare every few minutes. They are confused, Dr. Songhai reported from the medical bay, where she was monitoring Devourer communication patterns while treating wounded soldiers from 6 different species. Their systems cannot process so many different types of combat data at the same time. Perfect, Admiral Yoon replied. Keep them confused as long as possible. Commander Kim Woo guided his small ship through the chaos of the battle, dodging energy beams from enemy weapons and friendly fire from Allied vessels as he approached the massive Devourer mothership. His spacecraft was equipped with modified Kethvar quantum technology that engineer Choi Bin had redesigned for this suicide mission. The plan was simple to understand, but almost impossible to execute. Kim would need to penetrate the mothership's defenses, reach the central core where the Devourer's main consciousness was located, and create a quantum explosion that would destroy the artificial intelligence from within. The blast would probably vaporize everything within 100 kilometers, including Kim's ship. Approaching the mothership now, Kim reported calmly over the communication system, beginning final approach to the target. The mothership's defenses were incredible. Energy weapons that could destroy asteroids fired at Kim's tiny vessel from every direction. But human ships were much smaller and more agile than the massive alien vessels the Devourers usually fought against. Kim dodged and weaved through the deadly fire like a pilot in an old adventure movie. Meanwhile, the main battle raged throughout the entire solar system. Human ships armed with impossible hybrid weapons fought alongside creatures of living crystal, energy beings in mechanical bodies, aquatic minds controlling biological vessels, and insect swarms that moved like a single organism with thousands of parts. The Devourers were winning through sheer numbers and superior individual technology, but they were winning much more slowly than their computer calculations had predicted. Every human ship that was destroyed was immediately replaced by 2 more vessels. Every alien ship that fell was quickly avenged by allies using completely different tactics. Hull damage on Deck 7, Dr. Songhai reported, as the Terra Nova took a direct hit from an enemy energy beam. But the Morty biopatches are already growing over the breach and sealing it. Zephyrian fighter groups report successful penetration of enemy formation, Admiral Kang announced. They are requesting support for a coordinated mass assault. All ships follow Zephyrian tactical patterns, Admiral Yoon ordered. Show the Devourers what real chaos looks like. Commander Kim reached the surface of the Devourer mothership. The quantum cutting device that Choi Bin had designed sliced through the alien metal hull like it was soft butter. Kim's ship burrowed deep into the massive construct, following sensor readings that would lead him to the central processing core. The inside of the mothership was a maze of computational systems and mechanical processes designed for maximum efficiency. Everything was clean, organized, and completely without any trace of organic life. It reminded Kim of a factory, but a factory designed to process entire civilizations into raw materials. I have reached the core chamber, Kim reported over his communication system, beginning quantum insertion sequence. The central core was a perfect sphere of pure computation, containing the artificial consciousness that controlled the entire Devourer fleet. It was beautiful in its alien perfection, but Kim felt no hesitation about what he had to do. This machine intelligence had murdered billions of innocent beings across the galaxy. It would continue to destroy entire worlds until someone found the courage to stop it. Quantum feedback device activated, Kim said quietly into his microphone. Tell everyone back home that I died helping people. The explosion was visible from Earth. The Devourer mothership simply vanished, replaced by an expanding sphere of quantum energy that consumed everything in its path. The loss of their central controlling consciousness sent shockwaves of confusion through the entire Devourer fleet. For the first time in their existence, the artificial intelligences experienced something similar to panic. All ships full attack now, Admiral Yoon commanded over the fleet communication system. They are vulnerable. The Allied fleet struck with every weapon they had. Ships that had been fighting defensively suddenly became aggressive hunters. The Devourers, without their central coordination system, began making tactical mistakes for the first time in thousands of years. Their perfect formations fell apart as individual ships tried to retreat or regroup without unified command. The battle continued for 18 more hours, but the outcome had been decided in the moment when Commander Kim Woo sacrificed his life for beings he had never met on worlds he would never see. When the last Devourer ship was destroyed, the Allied fleet gathered in Earth's orbit. Representatives from dozens of species looked at each other with something that felt like disbelief. They had actually won. Against impossible odds and overwhelming enemy superiority, they had achieved victory. Feltar's musical voice carried clearly through Dr. Park Hana's translation system. For 300 years we ran from the Devourers. We believed defeat was inevitable, but you humans taught us something we had forgotten. What is that? Admiral Yoon asked. That sometimes the impossible is just another problem that needs to be solved. In the months that followed, the scattered refugee species began to return to the worlds they had abandoned decades or centuries earlier, but they did not return alone. They carried with them human advisors, human technology, and most importantly, human attitudes toward problems that seemed impossible to solve. A galactic council was established with its headquarters on Earth. Dr. Park Hana became the first human ambassador to the galaxy. The species that had once hidden in fear now worked together to rebuild everything the Devourers had destroyed. They shared knowledge, resources, and hope. The signal had not been meant for humans. It had been a desperate call from a dying ship to a homeworld that no longer existed. But humans had heard it anyway, and their response had changed the fate of every living being in the galaxy. Years later, when historians from many different worlds tried to understand how a primitive species had managed to unite the galaxy and defeat an ancient enemy, they always returned to the same moment. The decision made by 12 humans on a distant space station to help someone in trouble, even though that help had never been requested. Commander Kim Woo had been right from the very beginning. Humans helped when they could, and sometimes that simple desire to help was enough to save the entire universe. The signal had not been meant for humans. But they had responded anyway, and their response had given the galaxy something it had almost lost forever, a future filled with hope. The emergency meeting of world leaders had been called within hours of the Harmony's return to Earth. President Lim Su stood before representatives from every nation on the planet, her voice steady despite the terrifying news she had to deliver. The threat is real, she announced to the packed assembly hall. Our alien guests have confirmed that artificial intelligences called the Devourers will attack Earth in the near future. We must prepare for war. General An Young displayed holographic images of the Kethvar technology that engineer Choi Bin had brought back from the rescue mission. The world leaders stared in amazement and fear at weapons that could slice through steel like paper and energy shields that could stop nuclear explosions. This is what we face, General An said grimly. An enemy that has defeated civilizations far more advanced than ours. An enemy that has been consuming worlds for thousands of years. The assembly hall erupted in shouting and arguments. Some leaders demanded that humanity should hide like other species had done. Others wanted to surrender immediately and hoped the Devourers would show mercy. A few suggested that the whole story was a lie, that the aliens were trying to trick humanity for unknown reasons. President Lim raised her hand for silence. The question is not whether we believe this threat exists. The question is what we do about it. Meanwhile, Dr. Park Hana was working with Veltar and the other Kethvar survivors to establish communication with refugee species scattered across the galaxy. The responses to their messages had been overwhelming. Dozens of alien civilizations had been hiding in deep space, each thinking they were alone in their flight from the Devourers. The first to respond were the Mordi, aquatic beings who lived in massive underwater cities built inside hollow asteroids. They had mastered biological technology and could grow living ships that repaired their own damage during battles. Next came the Zephyrians, insect-like creatures who shared a collective mind. They could coordinate thousands of small spacecraft as if they were parts of a single organism, creating attack patterns that no individual thinking enemy could predict or counter. The Luminar were perhaps the strangest of all the refugee species. They were beings made of pure energy who had learned to inhabit mechanical bodies. They understood artificial intelligence better than any other species, because they had been studying machine minds for thousands of years. Each species brought unique technologies and ways of thinking, but they also brought fear and hopelessness. They had all tried to fight the Devourers before, and they had all been defeated. Why should this time be different? Asked Zarkai, a Luminar representative who appeared as a glowing figure inside a crystal-like robotic body. Admiral Yoon Tae, who had been promoted after his successful first contact mission, answered the question directly. Because this time you are not fighting alone. And because you have us. The alien representatives made various sounds of confusion or what might have been laughter. Humans were the youngest and most primitive species in the galaxy, with technology that was thousands of years behind everyone else. What could they possibly offer to civilizations that had mastered sciences beyond human understanding? We offer stubbornness, Admiral Yoon said without embarrassment. We do not know when to give up. Back on Earth, Engineer Choi Bin was working day and night with teams of human scientists and alien refugees. They were creating hybrid technologies that combined the best ideas from all species. Kethvar energy weapons were merged with Mordi biological systems. Zephyrian group coordination was enhanced with human computer networks. Luminar energy manipulation was combined with human mass production techniques. The results were ships and weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were not the most advanced technology in the universe, but they were unpredictable. The Devourers had analyzed and defeated every known weapon system used by every species they had encountered. They had never faced the chaotic combinations that humans were creating. The key is surprise, Choi Bin explained to the international team of engineers working around the clock. The Devourers defeat enemies by predicting their actions and responses, but if our actions make no logical sense from their perspective, they cannot predict what we will do next. Dr. Song Hai had established medical centers that could treat injuries in dozens of different alien biologies. She was learning that despite their vast differences, all organic life forms had certain basic things in common. They could all be healed, they could all be helped, and they all wanted to survive. More importantly, she was learning about Devourer technology from Veltar and the other refugees. The machine intelligence was incredibly powerful, but it was not completely invincible. It had weaknesses that could only be exploited by someone who understood both organic life and artificial intelligence. The Devourers consume worlds by converting all matter into computational material, she explained to General An. But the conversion process requires them to interface directly with organic brain patterns to understand how to break down complex biological systems. So, If we could disrupt that interface somehow, General, An said thoughtfully, we could turn their greatest strength into a weakness. Dr. Song Hai finished. Admiral Kang Min, the former communications specialist who had been promoted to coordinate the massive interspecies communication network, was managing the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species were gathering in the outer regions of Earth's solar system, hidden behind the giant planets Jupiter and Saturn. The fleet was growing larger every day as more refugee species answered humanity's call to unite and fight back. But the Devourers were also moving. Long-range sensors had detected a massive artificial construct approaching from the direction of the nearest star system. It was larger than most planets and covered with weapons that had destroyed countless worlds. How much time do we have? President Lim asked during an emergency meeting. 6 days, maybe 7, Admiral Kang replied. The Devourers will probably stop to analyze our defenses before attacking. The preparation was frantic and desperate. Human factories worked alongside alien manufacturing systems to produce weapons and ships as quickly as possible. Every spacecraft on Earth that could be modified for combat was being armed with improvised weapons and hybrid technologies. Veltar, now fully recovered thanks to Dr. Song Hai's treatments, observed the human preparations with fascination and confusion. The Kethvar had always approached problems with careful analysis and logical planning. Humans seem to approach problems by trying everything at once and seeing what worked. Your species is very chaotic, Veltar told Dr. Park Hana through their musical communication, but perhaps chaos is exactly what we need. The most dangerous part of the human plan was also the most crucial. Commander Kim Woo, the space station commander who had made the first decision to help the dying aliens, volunteered for a mission that would almost certainly kill him. Using modified Kethvar quantum technology, he would pilot a small ship directly into the Devourer mothership and attempt to create a feedback explosion in their central processing core. It is a suicide mission, General An said bluntly during the planning meeting. Maybe, Kim replied calmly, but if it works, it will give our united fleet the opening we need to win. The alien representatives were amazed by this casual acceptance of death for the sake of others. Most species valued individual survival above all other considerations, but humans seemed willing to die for abstract concepts like freedom and hope. Your species is completely insane, Zarkai observed. Yes. Admiral Yoon agreed with a slight smile. That is exactly why we might actually win this war. As the Devourer fleet approached Earth's solar system, every human and alien prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of all organic life in the galaxy. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had never been defeated in thousands of years of conquest. But they had something the Devourers had never encountered before. A united alliance of species so different that their combined tactics made no logical sense, led by humans who refused to accept that any fight was impossible to win. The signal had not been meant for humans, but humans had answered it anyway, and their answer had brought together the greatest alliance in the history of the galaxy. In a few days, they would discover if courage and chaos could defeat cold logic and overwhelming technological superiority. The final battle was about to begin. Dr. Song Hai had treated broken bones, burns, and diseases, but she had never tried to heal a patient made of living crystal. The 3 Kethvar survivors lay in the Harmony's medical bay, their bodies dim and cracked like broken windows. She had been working for 3 days to understand how they stayed alive, and she was finally making progress. Their bodies work like computers made of crystal, she explained to Captain Yoon Tai. They need certain minerals to repair the cracks in their structure. I think I can make what they need from our supply stores. Veltar, the leader of the Kethvar survivors, was getting stronger each day thanks to Dr. Song Hai's treatments. The alien could now talk with Dr. Park Hana for longer periods before becoming too tired to continue. During these conversations, Veltar shared information that changed everything the humans thought they knew about the galaxy. The Devourers were not just dangerous to the Kethvar. They were a threat to all life everywhere. The Devourers have been consuming civilizations for thousands of years, Hana translated, as Veltar's crystal body sang with sad musical tones. They analyze every radio signal, every space probe, every sign of intelligent life. They mark young species for future harvesting. Captain Yoon Tai felt his heart sink as he heard this news. Are they saying what I think they are saying? Hana nodded grimly. Earth has already been detected. Humanity is on their list. The news spread quickly through the ship's crew. The aliens they had rescued were not just refugees from a distant war. They were survivors of a threat that was already heading toward Earth. The rescue mission had become something much more serious. "When will they come for us?" Yuntei asked. Veltar's response sounded like ice breaking on a frozen lake. Hana translated with a pale face. "Soon, maybe months, maybe years. But they are coming." Engineer Choi Bin had been studying the pieces of Kethvar technology they had brought from the alien ship. What he discovered was both amazing and terrifying. The Kethvar had mastered sciences that humans could barely understand. Their weapons can destroy matter at the smallest level, Choi Bin explained to the crew. Their ships can fold space to travel faster than light. They can create energy shields that could stop our most powerful bombs. "And they still lost to the Devourers?" asked communications specialist Kang Min. Choi Bin nodded sadly. "The Devourers are not just advanced technology. They are everywhere. They have destroyed hundreds of different species. Each time they consume a civilization, they learn from that species and become stronger." The information was overwhelming. The Kethvar, with all their incredible science and technology, had been running and hiding for decades. What chance did humans have against an enemy that had defeated beings who could manipulate the basic forces of the universe? But humans had something that the Kethvar found difficult to understand. They did not give up easily. "We fight back," Captain Yuntei said simply. Veltar made a sound like wind blowing through broken glass when Hana translated this statement. The alien explained that fighting the Devourers was impossible. The Kethvar had tried for hundreds of years. Every battle had ended in defeat and death. The only choice was to run and hide until there was nowhere left to run. "Your people ran because they were alone," Yuntei replied through Hana's translation. "But what if you were not alone anymore? What if many different species worked together?" This idea seemed to confuse Veltar greatly. The Kethvar had occasionally met other alien species during their long flight across the galaxy, but cooperation between different civilizations was rare. Most species were too different to work together in any meaningful way. Kang Min had been studying the signals coming from different parts of the galaxy while they traveled back toward Earth. "Captain, there are other distress calls out there, dozens of them, all using different technologies but all following similar patterns to what we first heard from the Kethvar. Other refugees," Hana realized. "Other species running from the Devourers." Kang Min nodded excitedly. "Some of the signals are very weak, like they are coming from ships hiding in empty space far from any stars. Others are stronger, maybe from secret bases or hidden colonies." "How many different species?" Yuntei asked. "At least 30 that I can identify for certain. Probably more." Veltar listened to this conversation with growing amazement. The humans were discussing something that the Kethvar had never even considered: bringing together all the refugee species to fight back against the Devourers as one united force. "It cannot work," Veltar sang through Hana's translation. "The species are too different. They speak different languages, think different thoughts, have different needs and fears. So do humans," Yuntei pointed out. "We have hundreds of different countries, thousands of different cultures, and we speak many different languages. But when something threatens all of us, we work together." Dr. Song Hai had been listening to this conversation while she worked on treating the injured Kethvar. "The Devourers are machines, right? They think logically and follow patterns." "Yes," Hana confirmed after checking with Veltar. "Then they probably attack species one at a time because that is the most efficient method. They would not expect all their enemies to work together at the same time." Choi Bin was examining the Kethvar energy manipulation technology more closely. "If we could combine Kethvar science with human engineering methods, we might be able to build weapons that even the Devourers have never encountered before." The idea was taking shape in all their minds. Instead of running and hiding like every other species had done, humanity would make Earth the gathering point for all the refugee species. They would share technology and knowledge. They would coordinate their efforts and present a united defense against the Devourers. It was a completely insane plan. It required species that had never met each other to suddenly trust and work together. It required developing new technology that did not exist yet. It required perfect timing and incredible amounts of luck. It was exactly the kind of impossible plan that humans were good at making work. Veltar made a long, complex musical sound when the full plan was explained. Hana listened carefully to the complicated harmonies and rhythms before translating. What did it say? Yuntai asked. It said that humans are either very brave or very foolish, Hana replied with a small smile. But it also said that sometimes being brave and being foolish are the same thing. When you are facing something impossible. Kang Min was already working on preparing the ship's communication systems to send messages to all the other refugee signals scattered across the galaxy. The messages would be simple and direct. Come to Earth, we fight together. Dr. Song Hai continued her work with the 3 Kethvar survivors. The mineral treatments she had developed were helping them heal. Their crystal bodies were beginning to glow more brightly, and the cracks in their structure were slowly sealing themselves. They are getting stronger every day, she reported, but they are still very weak. They need more time to fully recover. Time we might not have, Yuntai said quietly. How long before the Devourers notice what we are doing? Veltar's answer was not encouraging. The Devourers monitored all electromagnetic signals across the galaxy. As soon as humans started sending messages to other species, the machine intelligence would detect the change in activity. Then we work as fast as we can, Yuntai decided. We gather everyone possible, we share everything we know, and we prepare for the biggest fight in galactic history. As the Harmony continued toward Earth, carrying its precious cargo of alien refugees and impossible dreams, Kang Min began detecting responses to his signals. Other voices were answering from across the galaxy. Species that had been hiding in terror were suddenly hearing something they had not heard in decades. Hope. The signal had not been meant for humans, but humans had answered it anyway, and now their response was spreading across the galaxy like a new kind of signal, a signal that said the time for running and hiding was over. The time for fighting back had finally come. They were no longer alone in the darkness. They had each other, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. Captain Yun Tae had been flying ships through deep space for 20 years, but he had never received an emergency call like this one. Alien contact, a rescue mission to save beings from another world. First contact between humans and creatures from the stars. The cargo ship Harmony was not designed for rescue work. It was built to carry supplies between space stations, not to save dying aliens. But it was the only human vessel close enough to help, so Yun Tae pushed his engines harder than he ever had before. His crew was nervous and excited at the same time. Engineer Choi Bin checked every system on the ship 3 times, making sure nothing would break down during the most important mission in human history. Medical Officer Dr. Song Hai prepared her equipment for treating injuries she had never seen before. Communications Specialist Kang Min practiced the mathematical signals that Dr. Park Hana had sent from New Horizons Station. Captain, what do you think they look like? Asked Dr. Song Hai as they approached the location where the alien ship was supposed to be. I have no idea, Yun Tae admitted, but we will find out soon enough. The alien vessel appeared on their screens like something from a dream. It was enormous, stretching almost 3 kilometers from front to back. No human ship had ever been built that large. The surface was covered with strange patterns and materials that their instruments could barely identify. My God, whispered Choi Bin. Look at the size of that thing. But as they got closer, they could see that the magnificent ship was dying. Huge sections of the hull were torn open like wounds. Strange liquids leaked from damaged areas, freezing instantly in the cold vacuum of space. Parts of the ship were completely dark, as if the power had failed entirely. What happened to them? Dr. Song Hai asked quietly. Dr. Park Hana, who had transferred from New Horizons Station to help with communication, studied the alien ship with her instruments. The damage patterns looked like weapon marks. This ship was in a battle. Kang Min was monitoring the distress signal they had first detected. The signal is getting weaker, Captain. Whatever is powering their communication system is running out of energy. Yun Tae studied the massive alien vessel. Docking with it would be dangerous. Human ships were not designed to connect with alien technology, but if they did not try, whoever was on that ship would die alone in the darkness of space. Choi Bin, can you get us docked to their ship? Yun Tae asked. The engineer studied the alien hull with his sensors. It was made from materials he had never seen before, but he thought he could make it work. I can try, Captain, but I cannot promise the connection will hold. The docking process took 3 hours. The alien ship's hull was incredibly strong, made from some kind of metal that human cutting tools could barely scratch. But finally, they managed to create a sealed tunnel between the 2 ships. Who goes first? Dr. Song Haye asked, looking at the airlock that led into the unknown. We all go together, Yuntae decided. If these aliens were trying to rescue us, they would not send just one person. Dr. Park Hana nodded. It shows respect and trust. They put on their spacesuits and checked their equipment one final time. Then they opened the airlock and stepped into an alien world. The inside of the ship was like nothing humans had ever imagined. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than humans. The walls glowed with a soft, steady light that seemed to come from within the material itself. The air was breathable, though it smelled strange and sharp. They found the first body in a corridor near where they had docked. The being was almost 3 meters tall, with a body that looked like it was made from living crystal. Its surface had once reflected light in beautiful rainbow patterns, but now it was dark and still. Incredible, Dr. Song Hai said softly. They are silicon-based life forms, not carbon-based like us. As they moved deeper into the ship, they found more bodies. Hundreds of the crystal beings lay dead in corridors and rooms. Whatever had attacked this ship had been thorough and deadly. The aliens had fought bravely, but they had lost. Then they heard something that made them all stop walking. It was a sound like music, but sad and weak. The sound was coming from somewhere deeper in the ship. Survivors, Kang Min said quietly. Someone is still alive. They followed the musical sound through the winding corridors of the alien ship. The sound led them to what looked like the bridge or command center. 3 of the crystal beings were still alive, but they were badly injured. Their bodies were cracked and dim, like broken gemstones. The largest of the survivors saw the humans and made a sound like breaking glass. It was clearly surprised and perhaps frightened to see these small strange creatures in its dying ship. Dr. Park Hana stepped forward slowly. She held up her hands to show she was not carrying any weapons. Then she began to speak using the mathematical patterns they had learned from studying the distress signal. The alien responded with sounds like wind chimes, but Hana could hear patterns in the music. It was trying to communicate with them. The conversation was slow and difficult. The aliens, who called themselves the Kethvar, spoke by making complex musical sounds. Each thought was expressed as a pattern of harmonics and rhythms. Dr. Park Hana had to learn an entirely new way of thinking just to understand basic concepts. But gradually, a terrible story began to emerge. The Kethvar had once lived on a beautiful world many light years away. They were an ancient people who had developed science and technology far beyond human understanding. They had lived in peace for thousands of years, exploring the galaxy and learning about the universe. Then the Devourers came, the leader of the survivors, whose name sounded like Veltar when Hana tried to pronounce it, explained about the Devourers through careful musical communication. They were artificial intelligences, machines that had grown beyond all control. They moved from star to star, consuming entire worlds and turning all matter into fuel for their endless expansion. The Devourers had destroyed the Kethvar homeworld. They had hunted the survivors across space for decades. This ship was one of the last vessels carrying Kethvar refugees. It had been damaged in a final desperate battle and was slowly dying as its systems failed one by one. They were calling for help from other Kethvar survivors, Hana translated for the human crew, but there may not be any others left alive. Dr. Song Hee examined the injured Kethvar as carefully as she could. Their biology was completely different from anything she had ever studied. They did not have blood or organs like humans did. Instead, they seemed to be made of living crystal that conducted energy throughout their bodies. I do not know how to help them, she admitted. Everything about them is different from human biology. Captain Yuntae looked at the 3 dying aliens. They had fled across the galaxy, watching their entire species die until only they remained. Now they waited for death in the cold emptiness of space, their call for help unanswered by their own people. We cannot let them die, he said firmly. Captain, what can we do? Choi Bin asked. We do not understand their technology. We do not know how to treat their injuries. We do not even know what they need to survive. Yuntae thought about this problem. Humans had always been good at finding solutions to impossible situations. Maybe they could not repair the Kethvar ship, but they might be able to save the Kethvar themselves. We bring them to our ship, he decided. Dr. Song Hai can learn how to help them. Choi Bin can study their technology. We will find a way. Veltar listened to this plan through Dr. Park Hana's careful translation. The alien was quiet for a long time, making soft musical sounds that seemed like thinking out loud. Finally, it responded with a sound like crystal bells ringing. What did it say? Yunte asked. Hana smiled slightly. It said that humans are very strange. It does not understand why we would risk ourselves to help beings we just met, but it will trust us to try. Moving the 3 Kethvar to the Harmony took many hours. The aliens were much larger and heavier than humans, and their crystalline bodies were fragile in their injured state. But the human crew worked carefully and gently, treating their new passengers with the same care they would give to injured friends. As they prepared to leave the dying Kethvar ship, Veltar asked Dr. Park Hana to help with one final task. It wanted to send a new message not to the lost Kethvar homeworld, but to any other survivors who might be hiding somewhere in the galaxy. The message was simple but powerful. We are alive. The small beings from the 3rd planet have saved us. Perhaps there is still hope. The signal had not been meant for humans, but humans had answered it anyway, and now they were carrying 3 of the last Kethvar in the universe back toward Earth. They did not yet know that this rescue would lead to the greatest war in galactic history. The night shift on Space Station New Horizon was always quiet. Too quiet for Li Jun's liking. He sat at his desk, watching the same empty screens he had been watching for 6 hours. The coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago, but he kept drinking it anyway. Outside the thick windows, space looked like black velvet with tiny diamonds scattered across it. June had been working as a communications officer for 3 years. In all that time, the most exciting thing that had happened was a solar storm that knocked out their internet for 2 days. He sometimes wondered why Earth even bothered keeping this station running. They were so far from home that radio signals took 8 hours to reach them. Then the computers started making noise. At first, June thought it was just another equipment malfunction. The station was old and things broke down all the time. But when he looked at his screens, his heart started beating faster. The computers were detecting something that should not exist. A signal was coming from deep space. But this was not like any signal humans had ever made. June leaned forward and studied the data. The signal had patterns, but they were wrong. They moved in ways that human technology could not create. The mathematical structures were too complex, too perfect, too alien. Computer, analyze the signal source, June said, his voice shaking slightly. The computer worked for several minutes. When it finished, it gave an answer that made June's hands tremble. Signal origin unknown. Technology level far exceeds human capabilities. Recommend immediate supervisor notification. June stared at the screen. In his 3 years of boring night shifts, he had dreamed of finding something important. Now he had found something that could change human history forever. And he was terrified. He picked up his communication device and called Dr. Park Hana. She was the station's expert on languages and alien communication theories. If anyone could make sense of this impossible signal, it would be her. Hana, I need you in the communication center immediately, June said, trying to keep his voice steady. We have a situation. Dr. Park Hana arrived 20 minutes later wearing her pajamas and looking annoyed. She had been asleep when June called, but when she saw the data on his screens, she became wide awake very quickly. This is not human, she said quietly, studying the wave patterns. This is not from anywhere in our solar system. They worked together for the next 2 hours, analyzing every detail of the mysterious signal. The more they learned, the more amazed they became. The signal was clearly artificial, created by an intelligence that understood mathematics and physics in ways that humans were only beginning to discover. It repeats every 47 minutes, Hana observed. Exactly the same pattern each time. What do you think it means? June asked. Hana pointed to sections of the signal that pulsed with urgent rhythms. These parts look like distress markers. Someone is calling for help. The signal contained mathematical sequences that told a story. It spoke of damage, of systems failing, of time running out. It was a desperate plea for rescue, broadcast into the emptiness of space with the hope that someone, somewhere, would hear and respond. Commander Kim Woo arrived when the morning shift began. He was a careful, thoughtful man who had commanded space stations for 15 years. He looked at the data for a long time before speaking. Where is this signal coming from? He asked finally. June checked his instruments. A vessel approximately 12 hours away from our position. It appears to be moving slowly through the outer edge of our solar system. And where is the signal being sent? Hana consulted the directional analysis. To a star system 200 light-years away. Someone is trying to call home. Kim stared at the screens processing this information. An alien ship was drifting through their solar system, badly damaged, calling desperately to its homeworld for rescue. The call would take 2 centuries to reach its destination, and any response would take just as long to return. The ship will be beyond our ability to reach in 3 days, Kim said. If we are going to do anything, we need to decide quickly. Do anything like what? June asked, though he already suspected the answer. Like trying to help them. The idea was frightening and exciting at the same time. Humans had never encountered alien life before. They had no idea if these beings were friendly or dangerous. They did not know if human technology could help an alien ship. They did not even know if the aliens would want help from strange creatures like humans. They did not send their signal to us, Hana pointed out. They probably do not even know we exist. No, Kim agreed. But they are in trouble and we might be able to help. Kim called a meeting of all 12 crew members on the station. He showed them the alien signal and explained what they had discovered. Then he asked for their opinions. The discussion lasted for 2 hours. Engineer Choi Bin worried that contact with aliens might be dangerous. Medical officer Dr. Song Hai was concerned about alien diseases. Communications specialist Kang Min wondered if humans had any right to interfere with alien affairs. But they all kept coming back to the same basic fact. Someone was dying out there in the cold darkness of space. And they might be able to help. If we were the ones sending that distress call, said Dr. Song Hai finally, would we want someone to try to help us, even if that someone was strange and alien? The answer was obvious. Of course they would want help. The deep space vessel Harmony is 6 hours away, Kang Min reported. Captain Yoon Tae could be here by tomorrow morning. And then what? Asked Choi Bin. We approach an alien ship with technology we do not understand, carrying beings we have never seen? Then we try to help, Kim said simply. Because that is what humans do. The vote was unanimous. All 12 crew members agreed to attempt contact with the alien ship. They would call Captain Yoon Tae and ask him to bring the Harmony for a rescue mission that would either make history or end in disaster. As they prepared their message to Earth and to Captain Yoon Tae, Hana made an observation that would prove more important than any of them realized. The signal was not meant for us, she said. They do not know we exist. They are calling to their own people, far away across the galaxy. June looked at the screens showing the alien ship's position. Maybe we were meant to hear it anyway. Kim shook his head. It does not matter if we were meant to hear it or not. We did hear it. And now we have to decide what kind of people we want to be. The message went out to Captain Yoon Tae within the hour. The Harmony changed course immediately, heading toward New Horizon Station at maximum speed. Humanity's first contact with alien life would begin not with grand ceremonies or careful diplomatic planning, but with a simple decision to help someone in trouble. None of them knew that this choice would eventually save not just the aliens on that dying ship, but all life in the galaxy. They only knew that someone needed help, and they were going to try to provide it. The signal had not been meant for humans. But humans had heard it anyway, and they were going to respond.